one of the problems in the past, especially like since 9/11, is that terrorism has become a category on its own. So we had the war on terrorism. It just seems to me the most ludicrous thing in the universe.
Yeah.
It's like almost saying it's the war on Christmas, or what does the war on terrorism mean? Because that means you've completely evacuated that act of violence from any political sense. And I don't understand, and a lot of us need to appreciate that a lot of the actions that we've seen in the past few years have been completely sort of voided out from any political possibility. So when Al-Qaeda does an operation, it's more about a spectacle. It's an end in of itself. You can't go and say to Al-Qaeda, okay, what is your political program? How are we going to negotiate with you? Because you're not going to get an answer that is impossible to deal with. But at the same time, we conceptually, to accept that terrorism sort of exists on its own, or it's like a form of a hobby or something like that that people can engage in, there's a conceptual problem in that. We need to understand that there are actions of violence that are politically motivated, and sometimes they have a sense of purpose to them, sometimes they don't. But to sort of isolate it from that, then you get into that game that you wanted to avoid, whether you call it state terrorism or all these sort of categories. What I want to say is that violence kind of in a political context? Does it operate in a political context? Is it trying to achieve an aim, or is it just confusing the issues? Where does it come from? That's what we need to be thinking about more.
Then surely should we not go back to the old ways of fighting then? Advancement of technology is very powerful weaponry we see. Like, you see, we have seen what happened in Hiroshima, we have seen all that stuff. What I'm saying is, like, should we not change the rules of war itself? Because what all we see is, we don't see soldiers fighting, we see innocent civilians, whether it's also on the Israeli side or the Palestinian side. Children, women dying every day.
There is something dangerous about us saying technology is getting out of control and it's causing all these problems, because ultimately it's who deploys the weapons, who takes the decisions, and that's what we need to be worrying about. You know, we live in a world where post-Hiroshima, post-Holocaust, the immediate response to that was that this is modernity has brought this about. And that was completely wrong. We need to understand that. But unfortunately, we live in a world that lives on this legacy. There are French writers and philosophers that made a whole career of just saying modernity is bad and this is what's caused all of that, as if kind of denouncing any sense of agency. Denouncing the very possibility that human beings can make decisions and make choices. And if you start with that, that's really basic. That sense of we are the ones in control. We are the ones, all this machinery doesn't do war on its own.
But I mean, like, how do we decide who answers those questions? Because if there's such a mixture, I mean, what would you say a society is? I mean, why do we still stick to national borders, for example?
Sovereignty is a very important thing. And sovereignty, before it even comes to the question of are you living in a kingdom or a republic, or before you realize that these are the boundaries of the society that you can engage in politics in, and this is up to you to determine how it is shaped and develops over time and all that kind of thing, you have to recognize the notion of sovereignty, which is extremely under attack today. This is the limits of your world, if you like. Now, there's nothing that says we shouldn't be global in outlook, or if you like, have the sense of solidarity and all that kind of thing. What's more important is what touches on your life over here. And you can always feel a kind of a sense of injustice or something like this that says, I need to do something about it. But you need to respect the opinions and the will of the people who live there. And unfortunately, and this is something that you mentioned earlier, that we all project on the Palestinians and the Israelis today. We all want to come up with these neat little solutions. Federalism, two-state, one-state, all these kind of variations. This is all irrelevant. If we want to do something about it, we need to understand the role that our governments are playing.
So can you explain more what that role of our government is?
When the war on Iraq happened, why didn't we manage to stop that war? Did we want that war to happen? Did the majority of people want that war to happen? Why do we still live in a society where our governments can wage completely meaningless wars, completely destructive wars, and kind of get away with that? And I understand there were a lot of big demonstrations, let's reflect back on it a little bit, because it's similar to what's happening now. What were the aims of these demonstrations? Did they have a very clear political aim? Did they want to kind of say no to your right to launch war in kind of without any political justification? No, it was a completely almost out of moral repulsiveness, but not out of any sense of wanting to challenge the system. I would have, if we had lived in other times, we would have said, this is horrendous. We need to go out there and change the whole system. But this is not for us just to complain about on Saturday and then forget about it until the next struggle. It means that every single one of us needs to be engaged in a way and radically challenging this system. And there we say it, the word revolution. I mean, you're all young people, full of energy.
Well, that seems a good place to leave it. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for. I'd just like to say a big thank you to Karl and to our WorldwRite volunteers. You've been watching Don't Shout the Telly, change the message on it. And in that spirit, if you'd like to let us know what you think on any of the issues raised here or in the programme, just click on Viewers Bite Back. And if you want to get involved in WorldBites and be on the panel next time, please get in touch.